Well, hello, my name is Joshua Brummel, one of the co-founders of Therapy Flow. If you're tuning in for this masterclass, either right after it was posted or a while into the future, catching the replay, I'm excited you're here. We're going to be talking about the one thing, growing your practice with simplicity instead of hustle. This was a talk that I put together for a keynote at Meet You in Kentucky 2024, but I wanted to make sure that the Therapy Flow community and all those that could not attend the keynote live got the same incredible value strategic planning content that I'm going to be walking everyone through at that conference and walking you through today. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go ahead and dive in. So like I said, we are doing the one thing, growing your practice with simplicity instead of hustle. At the end of today's talk, really what I want you to be able to do is have a longer to-do list, spend more hours trying to grow your practice, and profit less than ever before. That's probably not quite the outcome you're looking for when you're watching this video, nor is that the outcome that most of you are looking for when you're trying to grow and scale your practice. The reality is a lot of you find yourself right here, right now in this situation. When you're trying to grow, your to-do list is massive. It's never ending, and the stuff on it never gets done, or the volume of stuff on it never gets done. You're spending way more hours trying to grow and move the strategic goals for your therapy practice forward with not probably the result you're looking for. And you're probably profiting a lot less. You're not making as much cash that actually hits your bank account as you would like. The reality is, when we talk about strategic growth, hustle is an incredibly poor conductor for growth. Hustle is an incredibly poor conductor of growth. When you first start your therapy practice, volume of hours, working really hard, just putting sheer input into wherever you possibly can is one of the only things you kind of have going for you. That, at least that's how it was when I first started my business. I was working another full-time job, and I was like, I gotta figure out how to cram as much as I can outside of that to get this to the point where I could quit that job and go full-time. If you're scaling a solo or group practice, when you first start, hustle is your starting point, volume of work. But over time, it becomes like trying to use a hammer to fix every single thing inside of your practice. It can do some great stuff, but we need a different genre of tools, and we need to know how to access them simply, accessibly, and not just use hustle and volume of our to-do list to try and push the thing forward. So really, my hope, our outcomes for today is this next year, after watching this talk, you're going to be able to profit more. You're going to work fewer hours to see the same growth results inside of your practice. And today, I'm going to give you a simple standard operating procedure for growth, the SOP for simple growth. So here's the bottom line: is most practice owners use volume of hours and complex plans for their growth. And I don't want that to be you. I want us to have a much different process. Before we can talk about the SOP for growth and really dive in, let's visit, why did you start your therapy practice? What were you hoping to gain when you first started your therapy practice? Was it more freedom, more profit, more energy, more impact? Maybe some of you, you accidentally stumbled your way into a group practice because you had more referrals than you knew what to do with. So you made your first hire as an attempt to make a little extra cash. Maybe for some of you who have a solo practice, it was so you could have more control, or you could have get out of the community mental health space side of things. Think for a moment, why did you start your practice? That is going to become a very important driving force in just a second. So step one for growing, the SOP for growth, is a single clear, defined growth goal. A single, clear, defined growth goal. Bottom line is we'll talk about how to come up with that goal in a second, but we need to do our growth goals one at a time, but most don't. Because there's a million things at any point that you could do to grow your business and scale your business, it's really easy to try and shove all of them all at the same time. And it doesn't work like that. When you first start a fire, if you try and throw all of the brush and all of the logs and all of the process onto the fire that you are trying to long-term ignite and light and use as fuel, you'll never get that fire started. Typically starts with just a little bit of kindling as the first step. And then once that gets lit, you can add in your next little big thing, and then your next thing, and then your first log. And then you go one log essentially at a time until you get a roaring fire that can sustain itself. Many of you are suffocating your growth by making the process way too complex and essentially trying to light too many things on fire all at once. You're trying to get too much from your business too soon and too fast. You're suffocating your growth. It's really hard to grow unless you know what you are growing. And that's the other side of this coin. If you don't know what your goals are in a very specific, clear, defined manner, you're going to have an unspecific outcome. It's going to create an incredibly vague outcome for yourself. Bottom line, most never go past vague statements of growth. What do I mean by that? You want more revenue. You want more freedom. You want more flexibility. That's awesome as long-term outcomes for your practice. But how would you define freedom specifically and clearly? How would you define successful marketing specifically and clearly? How would you define the true growth goals that you're looking for? There are 4 major outcomes or business segments that most therapy practice owners are looking to get to some degree or another by owning a business. Stability, they want what they're doing to be stable and consistent. Revenue, you want your business to make a certain amount of revenue. Profit, you don't just want money coming into the bank account, you also want money to stay in the bank account. Scale, most of you have a certain idea of the certain size of business that you want to run. Freedom, many of you want the freedom and the flexibility that can potentially come from owning a business. And impact. A lot of you want this business to impact your team, impact the patients, impact your community. To some degree, you are able to get any one of these categories, all of these categories from your business. Typically, the longer, the bigger, the more consistent your business is, the more you get out of a lot of these categories. But this goes back to the vague statement of growth. Unless we come up with a specific growth goal, we will never drive specific outcomes. We will never drive specific outcomes. If you never define what freedom means, for some of you, the next benchmark of freedom is the ability to reduce your clinical sessions or take your clinical sessions to 0. For some of you, it means be able to put all of your clinical sessions as a solo practice in 4 work days a week. So you can have the Friday off every week. And that's what freedom means. For some of our larger group practice owners, it means being able to take a month off without the business burning down every summer to go travel with their family or do whatever that they want. For impact, for some of you, that means providing free or reduced cost sessions inside of your therapy practice to make therapy accessible. Others, impact looks like being able to provide a living wage and salary for the clinicians that you hire. And that's the big impact that you're trying to have. Some of you, scale means having a big team, having a big building for multi-locations. Stability looks like fill in the blank. Unless we define very explicitly the outcome we're looking for, we will not get the specific outcomes we're looking for. And here's the other big theory behind this, is that many of these in the short term as a priority often conflict. We need to go one at a time in our practice in terms of optimizing our therapy practice to receive or to grow in one of these categories one at a time because they often conflict. Here's the thing. If you're really trying to optimize your practice for freedom and your personal freedom, that means you are spending less time, less energy, and showing up less in your practice. It's really hard to do that at the same time that you are trying to scale, typically. Typically, scale requires the attention of the owner. And so the hours that are measured out of office don't equate to the growth if you're really trying to drive it. Profit, trying to secure more profit from the revenue you're generating, can have a reverse effect on impact. If we're really trying to optimize for impact, well, maybe we can't pay our clinicians an 80-20 split or 70-20 split. Maybe we can't give as many reduced fee sessions or free sessions away for the counselors that are on our team. Maybe if we're trying to really optimize for stability, then that also could affect profit because we're investing in team members to do certain things for us or to scale in a certain way that reduces what we're investing. If you're about to buy that business location for yourself or invest a big chunk in a new location, that's going to cut into your short-term profit, your short-term freedom. And I see it all the time is in February, someone's trying to optimize their practice for freedom because they feel like they need a break. And then in March, they're operating their practice for profit because they need some more cash in the bank account. And then April, they're trying to scale again, be like, oh, I need to grow this bigger because I don't have fill in the blank. And it changes week to week, month to month. I typically recommend that you need a 6 to 12 month stable time period where you're really trying to optimize your practice in a defined, clear, specific way with one of these. Otherwise, you're at risk of making them conflict and never reaching a good outcome, even if you have clarity on the outcome you're hoping for. And this leads to this slide and the title of the talk. There's a phenomenal book called The One Thing by Gary Keller, and he has this philosophy in it. What's the number one thing I can do right now, such by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? What's the one thing I can do right now, such by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? This runs through my head on repeat every single day. A small segment of time. Oh man, what's the one thing I can do for growth goals? Big segment of time. What's the number one thing I can do for growth goals this month, this year, this decade? Truly, it's saying what else will cascade into the other things? How can I reduce my strategy, reduce my effort, reduce the time spent down to the very next biggest, most important thing that will make everything else easier or unnecessary? For some of you, that's marketing. You just aren't generating enough leads to justify hiring team members, hiring admins, spending time on any other part of your practice. Others, it's you need the recruitment pipeline to really continue to scale, and building that recruitment pipeline to consistently get people to interview is the number one thing that will impact your business. There's so many options here. We're going to talk about what those activities for growth goals will be in just a second. It reminds me of a time in my life that I had just moved to the city of Chicago to go to college. I was 18. I had all the wisdom of the world. And essentially, the first weekend that I moved, a local showed me to a construction site of a skyscraper right on the edge of Millennium Park in Lake Michigan. They brought me up to the 50th floor because they knew how to get in, and we were able to walk out directly to sort of the edge, open air, and just see for miles all around. What was incredible is that I fell in love with the city at that weekend that I first moved, and I was like, I'm probably not going to leave here anytime soon, and I haven't yet. And I also got the bug for exploring and trying to find interesting places. This picture is one of those interesting places I found. About a year and a half later, again, maybe a little wiser, at 19, it was mid-February, and I was out after dark with a number of my friends. And we were walking under a bridge under the Chicago River Walk. And when you look up into the bridge, you could see sort of a hole in the side of the process. And it looked like there was a way to climb up and get inside of it. So being young and smart and everything else that comes with that, we decided to attempt to get inside of there. Once we all had climbed up and through, we found the inside of the bridge, the mechanism that took it up and took it down. And we saw these giant gears and knobs and the whole inner workings. And, we definitely realized that, hey, maybe this isn't the place for us. And so we decided to go deeper into the system. We start to walk further back. And at that time, essentially, we eventually hit a dead end. We eventually hit a dead end. And it's a dead end, maybe about this wide, a little wider than a body. And it looks like it kind of goes into a cave-like area in the back. But there's a 10-foot wooden wall that clearly someone had put there to keep people like us from going any deeper. So we each, one by one, jump up, climb over the top, get to the other side. When we are sitting there, we use our flashlights, we look around, maybe 10 feet back, it's a true dead end, just piles of rubble. We can't go any further. There's actually like metal rebar sticking out of both sides of the wall. It just kind of looked like where two buildings didn't fully connect, and there's just disintegrating dirt and concrete and brick. There's like several inches of like silt, dust, dirt, trash at the bottom of this area. We were just happy that we didn't find a dead body. Realizing that there's really nothing here for us, we one by one turn around and go to leave. I'm the last one out. It's pretty dusty in there. I start coughing. Right as that happens, the person in front of me jumps up to climb out and they kick their feet back. When you're coughing, I was done. I took a deep breath in. Right when that person kicked up all of the dust, the grime, the dirt, and it just sprayed me in the face. And I literally felt it all go deep into my lungs, cut my lungs, fill my lungs. And it was a whole process. I make it back to my dorm. And then for the next month, I spend coughing up black sludge and wheezing, and it was not a fun process. After about a month of this, the coughing had subsided, but I still felt really crappy and I still was wheezing a lot, so I decided it was time to go to the doctor. I go to the doctor, explain what happened, do some tests, and they come back with some pretty grim news that I wasn't expecting. They explained to me that in situations like this, the microscopic particles and the larger particles, my body had stopped coughing, but there was still certainly lots of stuff in there. And usually what happens is each one of those little fragments, if they don't leave the lungs, calcify, turn into kind of little pearls of scar tissue, and are breeding grounds for cancerous tissue. And usually you get fatal lung cancer that's more or less untreatable within 3 to 5 years of a situation like this. It was certainly not the news I was expecting, much less hoping for, and my situation turned pretty serious. Obvious next question is, great, what are my options? And they essentially said that I had two. Option number one, which isn't great and they kind of didn't recommend, is they could do a chemical bath of my lungs. What this would essentially do is try and wash out the stuff, try and burn out the particles. It usually damages the lungs a little bit, so you don't have quite the same capacity or lung health for the rest of your life, but it often prevents the severe or the cancer in totality. So it's kind of the lesser of the two evils. I was like, great, don't love option one. Tell me about option two. They go on to explain that coughing is your body's way of trying to dispel all of the junk, all of the particles in your lungs. And they said sometimes if we can mimic that to enough strength, enough degree, we can get the rest of it out of your lungs as a way to keep you healthy and clean. They went on to explain that what they wanted me to do was every single day go for a 3 to 4 mile run as hard and as fast as I possibly could for the next 12 months or longer, but at minimum for about 12 months. A daily run as hard and as fast as I could, because that would mimic and produce the big, deep, heavy breathing that might expel a lot of the junk that my body had stopped naturally coughing out. And they were like, those are your options. And I went back home, and the next day, that's what I started to do. Quite literally became a pretty big do or die moment in terms of what my life revolved around. There was a really clear, specific activity that needed to be attached to get this result. And that's where we're headed next, is if I had swam at that intensity or that volume, it wasn't going to get the result of the healing and the health that I wanted and hoped for. If I had done bike riding, it wouldn't have gotten the result. Choosing the correct activity for your growth is crucial. And doing it in the correct format and correct volume is crucial. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But an even bigger piece of it is I went back, and it didn't matter whether I felt good. In fact, the next couple months of running every day were really painful, because when I would go for the runs, I'd wheeze and I'd cough up crap, and it'd be really atrocious. And that was for months before things started to clear up and out a little bit. It didn't matter whether I was traveling or I was sick or that I had finals or whatever I wanted to do. My entire life kind of oriented around this big one thing that I had to do every single day, no matter what, if I wanted to live my life the rest of the way, for the rest of my life, in the way that I wanted. I want to reshare my screen and talk about the implications of this all when we start to apply it to our practice. This gets into step 2 for the SOP for growth, is you have to choose the right activity. Bottom line is, giant to-do lists don't drive growth. But we need to find the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule. This is essentially 80% of the process, the activity, the thing that you choose will probably drive the majority of the result that you're looking for. There were some tangential things I needed to do in order to run, testing, some nutrition, other stuff, but 80% of what was going to keep me alive was going for that daily run for an entire year. That was more than 80% of it. And the same is true for your practice. Your activities will not drive the outcome you're looking for unless you define them also by volume and by consistency. By volume and by consistency. You see, if I had gone for a 1-mile run every day, that wasn't going to be enough volume. And if I'd only done it one time a week, that wasn't going to be enough volume. And if I had only done it for 4 months, but still every day as hard and as fast as I could, that also wasn't going to get the job done. Volume and consistency. And that brings us to this activity planner that you can do for yourself for big growth goals that you can do right now. Essentially, you choose your big one thing, the business segment you want to impact. Hey, I'm working on freedom for the next 6 months. I'm working on profit for the next 6 months, the next 3 months. A 3 to 12 month time frame for like big planning is great for this initially. And then you describe your goal. Your specific freedom is in the next 6 months, picking up my kids from school every day. Freedom is by next June, being able to take the entire month of June off, whatever it is. And then we have to choose the activity that's going to drive the results. What will drive the result that you're looking for inside of your practice? For some of you, you don't know the activity, and that's okay. That's the activity actually that you need to put down is knowledge acquisition, coaching, strategic information gathering. That's the activity until you understand what will drive the growth that you're looking for. And then we can say, great, let's take this activity. Maybe it's something as specific as run Google Ads for the next 6 months. with this type of budget, with this type of outcome. For some of you, in terms of other marketing, it might be networking, it might be working on your brand, it might be working on fill in the blank. For macro, it might be recruiting, or it might be investing in your leadership team. Hey, I have all the team members in place. I have enough service happening, but I don't have the freedom. So I need to train my current team. That's your activity, is training. And then we get to, great, how much training? Well, I probably need to do some sort of daily or weekly leadership training with them. That's the volume. Daily, weekly training, quarterly training, whatever it is. And then for how long? In perpetuity, the next 6 months, the next 3 months. What does that look like? If you don't define the activities that you choose to try and grow your practice by volume and by consistency, you won't have the information needed to stay committed to them, to follow through with them, and to understand the cost. And this is really important for you to calculate, is what is the cost of the activity that you've chosen to do? Let's say you need more leads, so you need to work on marketing. That's your activity, is scale your marketing. Great. Now we've chosen to do Google ads and spend $500 a month on Google ads. That's your volume. And how long am I going to do that? At least 6 months. Cool. Well, there's a physical cost associated with that strategy, the physical ad dollars every month. But then there's also the opportunity costs, the time. Are you doing it? Is someone else doing it? What is it going to take to make these changes and these edits every week? What is it if I invest a couple $1,000s into this across the next 6 months? Where else could that money go instead in terms of opportunity costs? When you count the cost of your activities before you go full tilt on them, it can either A, solidify that you're on the right track and this is what you should sort of aim and do, or that you've chosen the incorrect matrix of the activity, the volume, or the consistency. For some of you, the cost will be too high because you're not doing enough volume or consistency to get the outcome you want. It's probably not worth running a Google ad for 1 single month. The cost will be too high for the result that you're going to get. Sometimes we make the recommendation that you onboard, train, hire, and fill out 2 to 3 clinicians at a time in a single month instead of just 1, because volume and consistency, it kind of costs the same to do 3 versus 1. You just have to have the lead flow. And then the reason why goal and outcome is different, the goal is what you're shooting for, which is great. And then the goal from there, after you do the activity, volume, and consistency, is to say, hey, with this volume of work and this consistency, what's the expected outcome? Because you could post on social media 3 times a day for 6 months, or 1 time a day for 6 months, and it both might help you reach your goal of getting new clients, but one might have a higher or faster outcome than the other. The cool thing is this works for big strategic planning in your practice and small key actions. For instance, how do I improve the open rates from 20% to 40% on my emails that I send out to my list? How do I improve the conversion rate in my intake session? How do I improve the conversion rate on my intake sessions? Great. What's the activity? Is it more leads? Is it role playing with your team? Is it sales scripting? Great. How often? How much? For how long? Is it tracking? It could look like a lot of different things for a very specific tiny part of your business. You could give this to your team members to do as well. But the big thing is, what is the outcome you're looking for? And there you have it. Step 1 of the SOP for growth. You have to have a very clear, specifically defined growth goal. Step 2 is you have to choose the right activity that will drive 80% of the result. And step 3 is execution. You just have to do it. You just have to do it. And now you've unlocked the ability to profit more, work fewer hours, and have a simple growth plan for your practice. We can all go home. Easy peasy, one and done. Not quite. I've gone through step 1 and step 2. For the SOP for growth. And in some ways, those are the easy parts. It's Easy to sit down and spend 20 minutes an afternoon strategically planning or strategically refining the activities that you need to do. It's much, much harder to actually follow through, stay committed, and complete the execution of your plan. And I know that you've all seen it, is good plans were implemented, and a week later, a day later, 3 months later, you got off track from it. Here's the problem. When I was going through the big medical process, if they told me the exact right thing to do, go for a run every day, 3 to 4 miles, as hard and as fast as you can, great. That's the volume for an entire year. That's the consistency. Great. But I never showed up and I never did the run, I would never get the result. Or if I only showed up for 5 months, I would never get the true result that I was looking for. And many of you are either not actually doing the work associated with the activities that will grow your practice, or you're not following through with a long enough consistency. One of the ways we keep growth simple is by being consistent for a longer period of time rather than shoving growth activity every time we feel the adrenaline, the up the ante, and doing flurries of action. Growth needs to be a consistent habit in your business. One of the first things I want to talk about is what's called deep work as a strategy to help you with this. If you don't give your best time to growth, your practice always grows slower than you want. It will always grow slower than you want. Many of you are giving your best hours, your best time slots, your best energy, your best emotional bandwidth to other things in your life, specifically, usually other parts of your business. You're letting sessions take your best hours. You're letting practice management. You're letting fires to put out. You're letting emails. You're letting billing issues, which are things that you have to deal with. But when it comes to growth of your practice, if we don't give the practice good growth time every single week, that's the reason why it's going slower than you want. So my recommendation is deep work or time blocking. Essentially, the volume is you need a 3 to 4 hour deep work segment at a time, and typically 2 to 4 times a week. No notifications, no meetings, no social media. You must get into the flow and execute. Work on the hard stuff, work on the complex stuff, work on the things you don't want to do, learn the things that are hard, build the things that will actually grow your business. You probably need 10 to 15 hours of consistent time blocking on your schedule a week for you to consistently reach your growth goals. For some of you, that might sound like a lot. For some of you, that might be a relief. Imagine if you could just put 2 segments of deep work, 8 hours a week on your calendar that you unequivocally commit to and always follow through on. I guarantee you your practice will reach more of its growth goals. Rarely is growth a struggle after 6 to 12 months of true deep work. Your calendar is a reflection of your priorities. If growth isn't on it, the rest of this doesn't matter. If you don't do the run every day, the rest of it doesn't matter. And that's why you can actually achieve the growth you're looking for with less hours than you're probably spending now. Because it cuts both directions. If you commit to spending the 8 to 12 hours, the 2 to 4 deep work chunks on your calendar every week, you can be confident you're going to reach your goals as long as you adhere to that and do the work inside of that time. And that also means on any given week, when you feel the pressure, you feel the need, you feel your business screaming at you to do more, you can actually say, no, I'm safe. I'm putting in the time and I can wait for everything else to happen. I just have to be a little bit more consistent. You can always work more if you want things to move faster. But most of the time, if you are at minimum doing some sort of dedicated rhythm at this segment in the way I just described, this implementing this is what changed my business and grew my business the most and the fastest, actually. And this is, if it's not on the calendar, the rest of this doesn't matter. But there have been periods of my life when this time has been on the calendar, and it either hasn't going as well as I wanted or as well as I'd hoped. And this is where the other huge factor comes in, and that's shiny objects. Many of you have heard about and known about shiny objects. This is the fun, new, glittery, lovely things that divert your attention. There's many shiny objects inside of your deep work segments, the notifications that require your attention, the fun social media to switch to. And there's a lot of research that shows task switching in that deep work kills your productivity, kills your ability to be in a flow state. But this is also true across the entire 6 to 12 month growth period where you're working on a macro goal in your business. The time frame isn't minute to minute, day to day, but it's week and month to month. If you let yourself get distracted away from your growth goal that you're trying to stay committed to, and you stop the execution, or you change tracks mid-process and try and apply it to something else, you will not see the growth that you're looking for, and growth will feel more complex, more cumbersome, bigger to-do lists, and it starts to cascade in the wrong direction. I'm going to walk you through five types of shiny objects in order to give you crisp clarity to identify these in your life when they're happening in real time for you and your team members. And some of you will identify with some strongly and others, and that's okay. That's the point of walking you through the 5. Recency bias is kind of the classic shiny object. A new idea, a new tactic, a new software, program, product has the promise, the allure to make things go easier. So you're like, great, let me spend all this time launching fill in the blank, or doing fill in the blank, or trying this new product. Maybe I should add coaching. That will help me reach my profit goals faster. Maybe I should add whatever it is. You've done it. You've tried it. This has happened to you. Recency bias, doing the new thing doesn't magically get you a better result. Most of the time, it just kills your current momentum. We are bred to think new is better. And typically it is. You want a new car instead of the old car. It's usually more reliable. New strategies are fun. They're sexy. We overvalue new. When it comes to a 6 to 12 month plan in your business, especially when we're choosing the activities, if you determined that posting on social media every day for a year is going to get you the goal, then it will. I think of someone like Ilona. She went all in. She's like, I'm going to do the work and I'm going to do the volume. Posting on social media will be my #1 client getting strategy. And she stayed committed to it. Within 6 months, she had the practice that she wanted at the high cash pay rate that she was looking for, and it unlocked everything. And if she had stopped short at 2 months, at 3 months, she wouldn't have gotten there. Don't get distracted by new shiny things. Stay committed. Then there's jealousy. This might sound like an odd one, but this is the core emotion actually behind the comparison in this world. This is one that I'm guilty of a lot. You look left, you look right, and you say, what are other people doing? How's it working for them? You hear of a friend that got better results than you did, or they're trying this new tactic, or they added coaching into their practice, so they have more freedom, or they have more money than you, whatever it is. It's okay, it's natural, but the reality is, if it makes you switch away from your current strategy, you are killing your momentum. That emotion of, I want what they have, often kills your momentum. Here's the thing, even if they have the result that you want, it probably is costing them more than what you would want to pay. Costing them more than what you would want to pay. Different things cost more or less for different people. Someone who's in great shape, going for a 2-mile run, super easy for them to do. It doesn't cost them actually a lot of energy or a lot of time. Someone who doesn't ever run, it's going to cost them a lot of time, a lot of energy. They might get injured in the process. It costs them different. So sometimes when you see a strategy working for someone else and you're like, I want that too, you just kind of have to know you don't have the fundamental things needed to get the result that they're getting. Or there's a whole bunch of things underneath of what it took them to get the result that you would also have to do. And you would be starting at the front of that process. They've already been posting on social media for 2 years consistently. So yeah, their coaching program that they launched was really successful. Great. You are working on your strategy that's going to work for you, that activity that you've defined. Don't get distracted. Because here's the thing, when you change the target mid-swing, you miss. If I'm looking right here and I'm trying to nail that target, and right as I let go of the bow and arrow and I look a different way, I'm going to miss the target. Don't let someone else's outcomes make you miss the goals that you're going after. Another big thing that ruins our momentum is complexity or difficulty. We get up to the computer screen, we're committed to do the work, and then the thing that we pull up, editing the contract, doing our taxes, putting together a new recruitment process plan, reviewing the calls of our team members, the hard stuff we don't want to do, or the things that's too complex and we aren't yet skilled to do, so we have to train or we have to try. Just because something is difficult doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. And bottom line is the only way for your practice is through. The only way for your practice is through the difficult thing. If that's the thing that's going to grow your practice, ignoring it, waiting for it to get easier, task switching or strategy switching, oh man, these Google ads are really hard to figure out. They're not profitable yet 2 months in. That's okay. But if you switch to trying to go post on social media, and then 2 months later you switch and you go back to listing sites, and then you switch again, because each one hits this point of difficulty that it feels too hard to wade through, it kills your execution and your momentum. We have to move through the difficult things. So please don't let complexity kill your practice growth. Commit to doing the hard stuff. And I know many of you have done so many hard things already. And I'll talk about it in a second, but growing your business is hard. Planning, it can be easy and it can be simple, but the work you have to do is sometimes hard. Impatience. This is a huge one for me, is I simply don't feel like the thing that I'm doing is helping me reach my goals fast enough. I think it shows up in kind of 2 places. There are some activities that it's kind of like popcorn popping. Nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. And then it pops open and like you get the result all of a sudden. And then some things are like gradual gains, kind of more like climbing a mountain. And so every step you take, you kind of can see a little bit of progress at each step. Either way, if it feels like it's going too slow and you start to get impatient with yourself or impatient with the lack of result. If after 3 months of running, I was like, oh, I'm not healed yet, I guess this isn't working. It definitely wasn't going to work then. We see this all the time where you commit to an activity and you don't count the cost. You don't measure how long you actually need to stay committed to it as the entry point. So you get impatient with the result and you get nearsighted and you don't do the work that's needed for long enough to follow through with it. Bottom line is speed is a byproduct. A fast car is engineered. You can engineer you and your practice to reach your goals faster. So for practice growth, speed is going to be a byproduct of your execution. Volume of actions, volume of hours. But speed also comes by consistency because momentum will make something in and of itself go faster. So you can do volume of hours. Networking is an example. You could reach out to 100 providers to network with in a single day. That's a high volume. But reaching out to 10 providers every week for an entire year will actually probably help you build more momentum and go faster than one-time big inputs. Similarly, you can't go to the gym once. You have to go to the gym doing enough work every day or a couple times a week for a long enough period of time. Just because something takes a while doesn't mean you are focusing on the wrong things or doing the wrong actions in totality. The other thing with impatience is sometimes adjustments do need to be made. And that's kind of the nuance of this conversation, not to make it too simplistic. Sometimes you are doing the right activity, but maybe you need to adjust the volume. Maybe you need to adjust how many times a week or a month you're doing it. Maybe you need to put more feedback loops in place to understand why you are doing it and why you aren't getting the result that you want. So you need to make adjustments. Maybe you're doing the correct action over here. So this could be marketing. Maybe you are generating enough leads and all of your marketing plans are working, but your conversion team, your intake team is, swinging and missing. And so you aren't getting the input into your practice growth that you're looking for. So sometimes before you switch activities, look at some of the small stuff before you jump ship and get impatient with the strategy you committed to. The last one I'm going to talk about as we wrap up here today, there's a couple just last quick things, if you can stick with me for a few more minutes, that are really, really important for you to take away. One of the biggest things that make us task switch, that make us pursue another strategy, is fear. And I think fear can look like a couple different things, but I want to talk about a very particular container and feeling. When you are growing your practice, it's kind of like walking up to the edge of a cliff and the edge of an unknown, and there's a really steep drop off. You have never been here before for your practice. The goal that you're working on, the outcome you're hoping for, the process you are excited to try and achieve is all new to you. You've never done it before. I remember the first time I was attempting to have my first 10K month ever. That felt like the biggest, the hardest, the scariest, the most dramatic thing in the world. And I reached it and it was awesome. But if I wanted to go past that, getting to 20K a month, getting to 80K a month was going to be this brand new thing. To grow your business, you will always be on the edge of the unknown and the never done before. You will always be on the edge of unknown and never done before. You've never bought that building before. You've never negotiated these types of contract terms before. You've never fixed this billing issue at scale before. You've never done the interview to hire your first therapist. When we think about fear, it can kind of sometimes looks like the fear of what if it does go right, the fear of what if it doesn't go right. And sometimes it's just the fear of being in a space, the uncomfortability really of being in a constant state of the edge of the cliff. Because here's the thing, the gut reaction when you walk up to the edge and you look down and you see the steep drop off is to take a step back. That's kind of the natural response. The reaction when you step up to do the big, new, unknown, never done before thing in your practice, the natural response is to take a step back because it's new and it's scary and it's unknown. When you're in a growth season of your practice, your ability to sit in this tension, identify it, name it, and choose to move forward with the complex and the difficult and the hard things and stay committed to your plan will define whether you're successful over the next 6 to 12 months. Don't let shiny objects, don't let fear, don't let the fact that you will always be in a space of unknown and never done before keep you from staying in that space and continuing to do the goals that you are certain you can commit. I didn't know whether running in the way that I needed to for 12 months was actually going to produce the result that I wanted. But I set the sights and I had to follow through. And thankfully, I'm here today filming this for you all. So it did work. Commit to the thing that you're working on. So how are we doing on the outcome today? Being able to have more profit, work fewer hours, and have a simple SOP for growth. Here's the fun thing. If you actually just spend that 8 to 15 hours of deep work a week on your practice, you're going to work fewer hours. If you reach your growth goals faster, you're going to make more profit sooner. If I had to boil down everything today, the SOP for growth boiled down to one thing today, which I wanted to do for you all, the one thing needed to not hustle and instead use simplicity to grow your practice, have unwavering execution to your plan. Have unwavering execution to your plan. I hope this helps, because bottom line is growth can be simple, even if it's not easy. I think for me, when I realized truly all I needed to do for my own business to grow was to stay committed to showing up to my deep work times 2 to 3 times a week. And that was the thing I really had to optimize and execute. When I showed up, what I did inside of those hours, the hard work that was required, was all going to take care of itself. That was really simple for me to wrap my head around. I've recently been going to the gym and doing some new and different strength training. And similarly, I was like, if I can optimize just to show up 4 times a week for an hour, I know I'll probably do the work during that hour that's needed to reach the goals that I want. So the hard thing that I do is make sure I'm committed. Stay with an unwavering execution to your plan. And I promise you that we'll be celebrating some huge growth goals inside of your practice soon. Thanks for being here. If you have any questions in the relevant channels, please post them. I hope this was helpful, and I'm sure we'll see each other soon. Stop the recording. Thanks for being here.